Debt is not neutral. It is either a weapon for dominion or a snare of slavery. Proverbs 22:7 says, "The borrower is servant to the lender." Yet if you look closely, that doesn't mean debt is always evil. It means debt places you in a position of submission. The critical question is, to what or to whom are you submitting? If you submit to consumer debt, clothes, cars, gadgets you can't afford, you're enslaved to the poverty spirit. But if you submit debt to kingdom strategy, to expansion, to creating assets that outlive you, then you are harnessing it as a weapon for wealth. This is where most Christians stumble. Some avoid all debt because they think it's sinful. Others drown in reckless debt because they confuse wants with needs. But here is the uncomfortable truth. God does not condemn the tool of debt. He condemns the misuse of it. Romans 13:8 says, "Owe no man anything but to love one another." That is not an absolute ban on debt. It's a warning against leaving debts unpaid and letting them dominate your life. Think of it like fire. Fire cooks your food, warms your home, and refines precious metals. But if mismanaged, fire burns down your house. Debt works the same way. Used with wisdom, discipline, and kingdom purpose, it becomes leverage. Leverage means using borrowed strength to multiply what you already have. Here's a financial truth. Billionaires and major corporations use debt constantly, not to survive, but to scale. Apple, Amazon, and even Christian-led businesses like Hobby Lobby and Forever 21 have used strategic borrowing to fuel expansion. So as we move forward, remember this principle. Debt is either a chain or a ladder. A chain if used to gratify short-term cravings, but a ladder if used to climb into long-term dominion. The choice is yours. Abraham was wealthy not only because of his faith, but also because of his ability to leverage resources beyond what he personally owned. Genesis 13:2 says, "Abram had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold." But if you study his journey, Abraham didn't hoard his wealth. He partnered. He built alliances with kings, used agreements to secure land, and multiplied his influence through covenant relationships. That is leverage. Here's the principle. When you leverage debt, you are borrowing capacity you don't yet have to create outcomes you couldn't reach alone. Abraham didn't march into Egypt with empty pockets. He aligned with Pharaoh and received resources. He didn't fight wars solo. He raised trained men from his household and allied with other kings. In today's world, this is the same principle behind business loans, partnerships, and financing. Look at it in modern finance. Suppose you have $1 million or $2,000 in savings. That's good, but limited. Now imagine you need to start a business that costs $5 million. You could wait for years to save up, delaying opportunity, or you could secure a business loan with a clear repayment plan and start now. If the business generates 1 million profit annually, the debt pays for itself and continues to multiply your wealth long after the loan is cleared. That's Abraham-style leverage. But let me give you a warning. Leverage without wisdom is suicide. If Abraham had partnered with the wrong kings, his household could have been wiped out. The same applies today. Don't partner with banks, creditors, or investors whose terms are destructive. Read the fine print. Understand the interest rate. Study the repayment terms. Proverbs 4:7 reminds us, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. Modern Christian entrepreneurs model this same principle. Masiyiwa, founder of Econet, leveraged partnerships and financing to grow one of Africa's largest telecoms companies. He didn't fear debt, he managed it strategically. That's kingdom thinking, using external resources to fulfill divine vision. So when you think of Abraham, don't just see camels and tents. See leverage. See a man who understood that his destiny was too big for only his own pockets. If you want to see where debt becomes a weapon for multiplication, look no further than business expansion. Businesses grow because they are fueled, and sometimes your savings alone won't be enough fuel to break limits. The right kind of debt, strategic, well-planned business loans can become your runway to lift off. Proverbs 24:27 says, "Prepare your work outside, get everything ready for yourself in the field, and after that, build your house." This is the wisdom of preparation. You don't borrow randomly, you borrow with a clear purpose, a defined field, and a proven plan. Let me make this practical. Imagine you're running a small bakery that earns $200,000 monthly profit. The demand is greater than your capacity, but you're stuck with one small oven. A commercial loan of $2,500,000 at 10% annual interest could let you buy larger ovens, expand your kitchen, and hire staff. Suddenly, your monthly profit jumps to $800,000. After covering loan repayments, you're still multiplying your net income. That is kingdom multiplication. The key is that the loan must fuel cash flow, not consume it. If the loan buys a liability, a car that drains fuel and maintenance, it enslaves you. But if it buys assets, equipment, inventory, or systems that produce income, it liberates you. This is the difference between debt as slavery and debt as leverage. Christian entrepreneurs have modeled this principle. David Green, founder of Hobby Lobby, started with a $600 loan to buy a small frame-making machine. That debt, directed toward productivity, birthed a multi-billion-dollar company. He didn't take the loan to look wealthy. He used it to become wealthy. And here's a powerful tool for you. Use QuickBooks Self-Employed or FreshBooks to track whether your business cash flow can handle debt repayment before you even apply. Tools like these help you forecast, test different repayment models, and make wise decisions instead of blind guesses. So, remember this truth. Debt for consumption suffocates you. Debt for expansion elevates you. The right loan, linked to a sound business plan, becomes a ladder of increase. Real estate is one of the clearest examples of holy leverage, using debt as a tool to build something that keeps growing long after you're gone. Psalm 24:1 reminds us, "The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof." Land and property carry deep biblical significance. Abraham was promised land. Joshua fought to claim land. Nehemiah rebuilt walls around land. Ownership of land is tied to dominion. And in today's world, real estate remains the most common way believers use debt wisely to expand wealth. Here's the principle. A mortgage, when managed strategically, is not bondage, but leverage. Imagine you buy a rental property worth $20 million. You only have $5 million saved. With a mortgage, you cover the remaining $15 million. If that property produces $200,000 in monthly rent and the mortgage costs $150,000 monthly, the debt is paying itself down while you build equity. Over 10 years, you now own a valuable income-producing asset that multiplies. That's holy leverage, turning debt into an inheritance machine. This is why many wealthy families don't just buy homes. They use mortgages to acquire rental properties, commercial real estate, or farmland. The property itself becomes the servant working for you while you sleep. Proverbs 13 verse 22 says, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." Real estate, when leveraged through debt, is one of the most practical vehicles for this biblical command. But here's the danger. Do not step into real estate blindly. Research location, study market trends, and calculate cash flow before you borrow. Tools like BiggerPockets calculators, Zillow Rental Manager, or Stessa, a property management app, help you forecast whether a property will produce enough income to cover debt repayment and still leave profit. Biblical stewardship means preparation. Nehemiah surveyed the walls at night before rebuilding. Likewise, before taking a mortgage, you must survey the numbers. Don't assume appreciation will save you. Build your plan on income today, not speculation tomorrow. So when you think about debt and real estate, don't see chains, see keys. Keys that unlock doors of inheritance, doors of passive income, and doors of legacy. There's one type of debt that can actually multiply your value if approached with wisdom: education debt. Proverbs 4:7 says, "Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Not all education is worth debt, but some investments in skill and knowledge pay you back for decades. Think about Daniel. He and his friends were trained for 3 years in Babylon, Daniel 1:4-5. That education positioned them before kings and gave them influence over empires. The training wasn't free, but it produced fruit that multiplied their impact and their rewards. Similarly, when you take on debt for training that significantly increases your earning capacity, professional certifications, advanced degrees, or specialized technical skills, that's not wasteful debt, that's productive leverage. Here's the test. Will the debt open doors to higher income, stronger opportunities, and long-term influence? For example, if you borrow $3 million to complete a nursing degree, and that degree increases your salary by $200,000 every month, the debt will pay itself back in just over a year. After that, the increase is profit for the rest of your career. But if you borrow $5 million for a course in something that has little job demand or that you're not committed to finish, that debt becomes slavery. Education debt must be strategic, not sentimental. Don't borrow for prestige, borrow for productivity. There are also tools to make this smarter. Platforms like FAFSA for U.S. students, SoFi student loan refinancing, or even Google Sheets career ROI calculators help you measure whether the long-term benefit outweighs the short-term cost. Use them before you sign. And here's a spiritual insight. When you invest in learning, you're sharpening your axe. Ecclesiastes 10:10 says, "If the axe is dull and one does not sharpen the edge, then he must use more strength, but wisdom brings success." Education debt is sharpening the axe. If it multiplies your output, it's worth it. If it doesn't, you're just swinging harder at the wrong tree. Your credit score is more than a number, it's your financial reputation. Proverbs 22:1 says, "A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches." In today's system, your name in the financial marketplace is your credit score. Handle it well, and banks will lend to you at cheaper rates. Abuse it, and you'll be punished with high interest or outright rejection. Think about Joseph in Egypt. When Pharaoh handed him the keys to manage the economy, it wasn't because Joseph had money, it was because he had credibility. Genesis 41:39-40 records Pharaoh saying, "There is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace." Joseph's reputation opened doors. In the same way, your credit score is your Joseph factor. It unlocks cheaper capital and greater opportunities. Here's how it works practically. A person with a FICO score of 780 could qualify for a mortgage at 6% interest, while someone with a score of 620 might pay 9% on the same loan. Over 30 years, that difference could cost tens of thousands of dollars extra. One man is stewarding wealth, the other is draining it, all because of credibility. You don't have to guess where you stand. Free tools like Credit Karma, Experian, and Credit Sesame allow you to monitor your credit score, track changes, and get alerts. If you're in Nigeria or other regions without a universal credit score, platforms like CRC Credit Bureau or First Central Credit Bureau play similar roles. These tools give you visibility over how lenders see you. Here's the kingdom principle. When you maintain integrity in small financial dealings, paying bills on time, keeping debt ratios low, honoring agreements, you build credibility. Luke 16:10 says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." Lenders trust you with larger resources when you've proven faithful with smaller ones. So never despise your credit score. Guard it, use it, strengthen it, because it's not just a number, it's a gateway to wealth leverage. One of the smartest ways to flip debt from a curse into a blessing is through debt consolidation. Think of it as gathering your scattered battles into one winnable war. Ecclesiastes 4:12 says, "Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken." The same principle applies to debt. When you combine scattered obligations into one strategic plan, you gain strength and clarity. Here's how it works. Imagine you're juggling 4 credit cards with different interest rates: 20%, 25%, 18%, and 15%. Each month, you're barely keeping up with minimum payments, and most of what you pay goes into interest instead of reducing the balance. Through consolidation, you roll all 4 debts into a single loan with a 10% interest rate. Suddenly, your monthly payments are lower, your repayment schedule is clearer, and your cash flow is freer. That extra breathing room can now be redirected into investments or savings. This isn't just theory, it's a powerful cash flow strategy. Cash flow is king in wealth building. Without it, you suffocate. With it, you grow. Joseph understood this during the famine in Egypt. He consolidated food resources, managed them wisely, and as a result, nations survived while Egypt prospered. Genesis 41:48-49. That's a biblical model of consolidation, bringing chaos into order so you can multiply resources. Now, tools exist to help you do this practically. Platforms like SoFi, Lending Club, and Marcus by Goldman Sachs offer debt consolidation loans at lower rates. For Christians who want accountability, apps like EveryDollar from Dave Ramsey's team or YNAB, You Need a Budget, allow you to track exactly how consolidation improves your financial picture. Here's a kingdom warning though. Consolidation is not an excuse to continue reckless spending. It's a reset button. If you consolidate debt but refuse to change habits, you're just rearranging chains instead of breaking them. But if you pair consolidation with financial discipline, it becomes a powerful tool, freeing your hands so you can pick up new tools of wealth building. So think of debt consolidation this way. It's not escape, it's strategy. It's you taking dominion over scattered obligations, commanding them into order, and reclaiming your financial breath. There's a principle the wealthy understand that most Christians overlook: other people's money. The Bible calls this stewardship. In the parable of the talents, Matthew 25:14-30, the master entrusted his resources to servants and expected them to multiply it. The servants who used someone else's money wisely were rewarded with more. The one who buried it in fear was punished. That's the kingdom view of OPM. When you borrow or manage external resources, you're tested on stewardship. Here's the practical side. OPM is not just about bank loans. It includes investors, partnerships, and financing structures. For example, if you raise $10 million from investors to start a logistics business and you operate with integrity and profitability, you don't just grow wealth, you also build credibility. You're trusted with more. That is how kingdom entrepreneurs scale. Consider this. Wealthy real estate investors often buy entire apartment complexes with very little of their own money. They pool investor funds, secure bank financing, and then manage the property to generate returns. While average people say, "I can't afford it," the wealthy say, "How can I control it with OPM?" That's why their wealth multiplies across generations. There are modern tools to help you access OPM wisely. Platforms like Fundrise, CrowdStreet, or even peer-to-peer lending platforms allow you to either borrow or co-invest with others. These models are built on the principle of leveraging resources outside yourself. The key is ensuring that every arrangement has clear terms, transparent repayment, and a return-producing purpose. But here's the warning: OPM is not a free ride. Just as the parable shows, unfaithful servants are judged harshly. Luke 16:11 says, "If you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? If you mishandle other people's money, you damage your witness and close doors. But if you steward OPM faithfully, God opens greater resources to your hands." So here's the mindset shift. Stop saying, "I don't have enough." Start asking, whose resources can I steward to build kingdom wealth? That's the OPM mindset. The servant who multiplies entrusted resources becomes ruler over many. Debt can become a bridge to legacy when it is used to build generational assets. Proverbs 13:22 declares, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." Notice, it doesn't just say children, it says children's children. That means you're called to think generationally, not just personally. Think about Solomon. His father David prepared resources for the building of the temple, but Solomon carried it forward with the help of alliances, skilled labor, and wealth leveraged through partnerships. The project was massive, beyond what one man could fund outright, but the legacy it established lasted for centuries. That is the power of using resources, including debt, to build assets that outlive you. Here's how it looks today. Suppose you use a mortgage to acquire farmland or a loan to build a commercial plaza. Those assets not only generate rental income for you, but also remain for your children. By the time the debt is cleared, your heirs inherit wealth without the burden of starting from scratch. Debt becomes a temporary burden you carry so that your lineage walks in permanent blessing. Real-world Christian entrepreneurs have modeled this too. Take David Green of Hobby Lobby. His careful use of leverage allowed him to build a multi-billion-dollar company that now employs tens of thousands and funds countless ministries. Or strive Masiyiwa, who leveraged capital to establish Africa's leading telecom empire, securing generational wealth while also funding education for thousands of children. These men didn't fear strategic debt. They used it as scaffolding to build empires for kingdom impact. Here's the practical side. If you want to use debt generationally, tools like estate planning services, trust and will platforms, or even QuickBooks Online Accountant help you structure assets so they're not lost in probate or legal confusion. Pair this with life insurance as an investment tool, and you're not just thinking of today, you're insuring tomorrow. So remember this truth. If you only think about yourself, debt enslaves you. If you think about your children's children, debt can build freedom. That's the mindset shift from survival to dominion. If you're going to use debt as a servant and not a master, you must have the right tools. Proverbs 15:22 says, "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed." In today's world, those advisors are often software, apps, and tested financial systems that keep you accountable. Here's the problem. Most people take on debt blindly. They don't track interest rates, don't calculate repayment schedules, and don't forecast cash flow. Then they wake up shocked when debt consumes them. The antidote? Tools that help you stay in control. Start with Mint or EveryDollar for budgeting. These apps allow you to see exactly how debt repayment fits into your monthly expenses. They expose where money is leaking and help you redirect resources toward debt reduction or productive investments. If you want to attack debt aggressively, use the debt avalanche method, pay off highest interest rates first, or the debt snowball method, pay off smallest balances first for quick wins. Tools like Unbury.me or Tally automate these strategies for you. For monitoring your credit health, use Experian or Credit Karma. They not only track your score, but also show how new debt might affect it. Think of this as Joseph's granary system in modern form. You are keeping record of inflows, outflows, and reserves, so you never get blindsided by famine. Genesis 41:48-49. And when it comes to forecasting bigger debt decisions, like mortgages or business loans, tools like Personal Capital's Retirement Planner, Excel financial models, or QuickBooks Self-Employed give you clarity. They simulate different repayment scenarios so you can test before you borrow. Here's the kingdom insight. Tools don't replace wisdom, they enhance it. Just as David used a sling to defeat Goliath, you need modern tools to slay the giant of bad debt and direct good debt into wealth building. A sling without skill is useless, but skill with a sling changes everything. So don't approach debt casually. Arm yourself, track it, measure it, forecast it. Because mastery of tools leads to mastery of money, and mastery of money releases you to focus on kingdom purpose. Here's the danger zone: consumer debt traps. This is where many believers lose their freedom without even realizing it. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." Consumer debt is the financial embodiment of gulping everything down today and leaving nothing for tomorrow. Credit cards, payday loans, buy now, pay later apps, they whisper convenience, but deliver slavery. You see the shiny gadget or latest car model and swipe without thinking. Suddenly you're paying 24% interest on something that's losing value every day. That is not wealth building, that is wealth bleeding. This is what I call the poverty spirit, a mindset that craves instant gratification at the expense of long-term blessing. The enemy doesn't always steal with demons. Sometimes he steals with credit card bills. When you confuse wants for needs, you mortgage your future for today's impulse. Think about Esau selling his birthright for a single meal, Genesis 25:34. That's consumer debt in biblical form, sacrificing tomorrow's inheritance for today's appetite. Don't repeat his mistake with money. Practical strategies exist to avoid these traps. Use the envelope system. Allocate physical or digital envelopes for categories like food, clothing, and transportation so you never overspend. Apps like YNAB, You Need a Budget, or Pocket Guard make this method easy. If you're tempted by credit card debt, consider using debit cards or prepaid cards until you've built financial discipline. Here's another powerful tool. Automate savings and investments so your money is working for you before you even touch it. Platforms like Acorns, Wealthfront, or Fidelity Bloom round up transactions and invest automatically. That way, instead of your spending habits feeding banks, they're feeding your future. And let me speak directly here. If you're drowning in consumer debt, stop adding new charges immediately. Freeze the card if you must. Then start a debt snowball or avalanche plan to attack it. Freedom begins the moment you refuse to be Esau, trading destiny for cravings. Consumer debt is a trap. Recognize it, reject it, replace it with disciplined stewardship. If you want to see debt transformed into opportunity, you must master faith, discipline, and delayed gratification. Hebrews 6:12 says, "Through faith and patience, inherit the promises." Notice, it doesn't say through shortcuts. Wealth built through God's way requires patience and the courage to say not yet when the world is screaming now. Delayed gratification is the exact opposite of consumer debt. Instead of mortgaging tomorrow for today's craving, you're sowing today for tomorrow's harvest. This is the difference between Jacob and Esau, between inheritance and appetite. Here's the practical picture. Instead of financing a $15 million car on high-interest debt, you drive your older car while channeling those same payments into investments. In 5 years, those investments could buy that same car outright while still leaving you with assets. This is not deprivation, it's discipline. Proverbs 25:28 says, "Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control." If you lack discipline with debt, you're defenseless against poverty. Discipline also means tracking progress. Use tools like Tiller Money or Google Sheets Debt Tracker to visualize how every delayed purchase is accelerating your freedom. Celebrate milestones along the way, because every small act of discipline is another stone in your fortress of wealth. Faith ties it all together. Faith is believing that waiting on God's timing produces greater fruit than rushing ahead in fear or comparison. Faith says, "I don't need to prove my wealth with debt-driven status symbols. I will let God establish my wealth through wisdom and stewardship." Look at Joseph. For 7 years, he stored grain patiently, resisting the urge to consume. When famine came, Egypt was the wealthiest nation in the region. Joseph didn't just manage debt, he managed patience, and patience became prosperity. Here's your mindset shift. Discipline is wealth in disguise. Every not yet today is a well done tomorrow. Faith plus discipline makes debt your servant, not your master. The truth is, you don't have to look far to see modern Christian entrepreneurs who mastered leverage. They didn't run from debt, they stewarded it for kingdom impact. Their stories are proof that when faith meets discipline, debt becomes a ladder, not a chain. Take Strive Masiyiwa, founder of Econet. He faced enormous resistance building a telecom company in Africa, but he used financing and partnerships to scale far beyond what his own capital could do. Today, Econet reaches millions, and his foundation funds education for thousands of African students. Masiyiwa didn't worship debt, he managed it to serve a vision bigger than himself. Consider David Green of Hobby Lobby. He started with a $600 loan to buy a frame-making machine. That single loan multiplied into a multi-billion-dollar business, employing tens of thousands, while funding Bible museums and countless ministries. Green never hid from leverage, he disciplined it into kingdom expansion. Or think of Mary Kay Ash, founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics. Though not often highlighted in Christian finance circles, her faith guided her to build one of the most influential businesses in the world. She leveraged credit and partnerships to grow her company into a global brand, all while empowering women and giving generously. Even John Tyson, the Christian businessman behind Tyson Foods, used financing and smart leverage to expand what started as a small chicken business into one of the largest food companies globally. The key? He never let debt control his values. His faith directed how money was used. The pattern is clear. Each of these entrepreneurs had two things: vision and discipline. Without vision, debt is waste. Without discipline, debt is destruction. But when vision and discipline unite, debt becomes a divine instrument. This is your model. Don't let fear paralyze you. Don't let recklessness enslave you. Follow the example of those who used small beginnings, leveraged wisely, and multiplied into kingdom giants. You've now seen how debt, when wielded with wisdom, becomes a servant of destiny instead of a master of destruction. The Bible is clear: the borrower is servant to the lender, 22:7. But here's the secret: you don't have to remain the servant. With kingdom wisdom, you can make debt serve your purpose, your business, your family, and your God-given legacy. So speak these affirmations over your life. I am not a slave to debt. Debt serves me. I borrow for vision, not for vanity. My credit is a testimony of integrity and faithfulness. I use leverage to build assets, not to chase cravings. Generational wealth flows through me to my children's children. The poverty spirit has no hold on me. I walk in kingdom abundance. Remember this: debt is like a river. Uncontrolled, it floods and destroys. But when you build banks and channels around it, that same river powers cities, waters farmland, and multiplies life. The same is true for you. With faith, discipline, and tools of stewardship, debt will not drown you. It will fuel your increase. And now your action step: don't just consume this teaching, apply it. Open mint or every dollar. Track your debts. Ask yourself which are chains and which can become ladders. Then commit to stewarding them with kingdom purpose. This is WealthOga, where we don't run from financial truth, we face it with boldness, faith, and strategy. If this message opened your eyes, subscribe right now, share this with a friend who needs freedom, and join us as we equip believers worldwide to walk in wealth and dominion. Because your financial breakthrough is not just about you, it's about building the kingdom, blessing generations, and proving that God's wisdom works in the marketplace.